Hello everyone, welcome back to the sessions of database management systems. Okay, warm welcome to everyone, and have a few days gap between this session and the second session and the third session. And don't worry, we just cleared the previous things in just few minutes time. So then we'll proceed with the today's session. So I guess you guys are a bit about learned in the day 1 as well as day 2 sessions. Okay. So what we have learned in day 1 and day 2, we will just quickly revise those things, and we will proceed with the day 3 session. And what is an objective of the day 3 session is? The main objective of day 3 session is to cover what is the data management, and we're going to cover what is a database concept, and also we will see different database models in applications development. For example, if someone wants to develop a specific application in the market, a real world application, so what kind of architectures or what kind of models they are going to use. Okay. So same thing what I am going to do in this particular sessions also, I am going to take a simple basic some requirement of any applications like a real world application, and to that application I am going to design my database. Yes. So first thing is, let me revise the yesterday's session, I mean to say day 2 session first. In day 2 sessions we have learned about, the first thing is what is a database management system is, and second thing is we have found a few drawbacks of database file management system, right. So as like the files of Excel sheets, Word documents, as well as the Excel sheets or else Access and all, these are having a few difficulties to working on that particular application. So that what we have designed is, we have designed a new model, call it as a database. What is this database do is, database will remove the difficulties which we have faced in the file systems. I mean to say that, so the files are not secure, it have a lot of redundancy, as well as it is not much performance, as well as the accuracy level also it would be very less. So these are the few drawbacks we have analyzed in the last class, if I am not wrong. Okay. So I guess you guys already written a few points in the last session about the differences of your file management is one side, the database is on other side. Yes. So what is actually what after that what we have learned is, we have learned something called it as levels of application, nothing but a view level, physical level, as well as logical level. So we have find the three different kind of levels we have seen in that. So now what I want to share in this session is, what is the mean of data management, how this data management comes up with database systems. Yes, very clear guys. Now let me start with our session of day 3 today. So yes, so we are going to talk about the day 3 session of a database management system, how this will be works, and what are the objects we will learn on this today's session is. Okay. So we will learn today's session about data management, how this data can be stored in one particular format, and how this data will be utilized for your next further reference. To do this data management, we require the database systems. So what is a database systems or? So before we proceeding about the databases, we have a different databases in the market. So we have a lot of databases in the market, like, so few people will use a database as Oracle database, right. Few people will use the database as Microsoft SQL Server. Few people will use it as a DB2. These are the different databases which we use in the market right now. For example, let me talk about the DBMS will be again the next level of DBMS is it's RDBMS. It is pretty simple differences we have. DBMS does not have a relations of both tables. For example, the data basically organized in the tabular format, if I am not wrong, if it is in databases. So the databases data is organized in the single table. Instead of that, if you want to organize the data in multiple tables, so that your redundancy again decreases, so that you makes the relation of one table to another table. So whatever the products which we are using in the market, like Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, as well as DB2, or else MySQL, or else SQL Log, or all the different databases are using in the market. For all these databases, the data basically stored in the tabular format. I mean to say table format, means what? It consists of a few attributes which is stored in vertical lines, rows which have been held in the horizontal format, that we basically call it as a rows, right. So for that we usually use the databases as well as database management systems. Okay. Now let me quickly go through what is this data management. See that the data management is a development and execution process of architectures, policies and practice and procedures in order to manage the information and the life cycle needs of enterprise in an effective manner. Yes, what does it mean to say that? Okay, now let me revision this particular sentence again. So data management is the development and execution process of architecture. Yes, what is the architecture is? People have get a right that what is this architecture is? Architecture is a simple the way are steps to define a problem, right. To solve the particular problem, we usually define the things in step-by-step manner, that we usually call it as an algorithm. I guess you know this algorithm, right. The algorithm, there are different algorithms in the market which solve the solution for the different problems. Pretty simple, I can tell you. An algorithm is in the sense, algorithm is the solving. For example, I got a simple problem, like for example, I'm just going with a bike. Right, I am riding on a bike, I am just going for a long drive. When I am going to a long drive, a few difficulties I am going to face. For example, sometime my fuel got out, right, it is got dry. So that what is the thing I need to do is, I need to fill the particular fuel into my bike or a car. So if this is one basic algorithm, problem is particular problem, I can have a solution to that particular problem. Instead of using a fuel, if I fill the air, is that algorithm does works? Is a problem for you? Is a solution you will get for this? No, 100% not. Because one particular problem can solve that particular, the solution can be in different way, but the solution has to be in a proper way to solve that particular process. But altogether, the algorithm is a process. Make sure that to solve the particular problem, we usually process in a different ways. Same thing as like your architectures also. Architecture is also a process of solving the solution in better approach. Am I very clear? Means what? I can have one problem, I have two solutions with me, but which one I basically select I can select a solution in a such a way that which satisfies the solution for this. I mean to say which has to be in very effective, less span of time, as well as more accuracy, I will choose that particular thing. Yes or no? That is what a basic importance of your algorithm concept. The same algorithm concept, the process of execution and architectures also, right. So the next thing is, you can see here the policies and followed by the procedures to manage the information. So as you talking about the data, data is the raw information. Raw information in the sense, it is not meaningful data first of all. As you can see, the first day I was explaining you about the data as well as information, and this data is transferred as information when you process it. Basically, what is the reason to process this data? The data has to be processed. Basically, the data will be in raw format where no one will understand it properly. It's a meaningless data. So when you process the data, it will be on the information, it will be affected as a information now. This information is such a way that it is purely meaningful information, it have a proper meaning to it. That data has to be stored in a particular proper way, that is procedural way to store that information. Very important thing, and this will be the life cycle needs on enterprise in effective manner. It will be in proper way, very easy way to understand by the developer who is developing that application, and it is also very easy to the application who is using it. Right, there are the two persons in the market right now, the person who can develop that application and the person who can use that application. Very simple, I can tell you. For example, as we are using a WhatsApp, as we are using a Twitter, as we are using a Facebook in our mobile devices or else a tabular devices. Yes, but no one knows that there are the persons who is already created that. Means what? An application is created by a specific programmers and the application data is managed by the few programmers, and as we are the end users, we are just using the data, we are just using what is that application is giving an output for us. But there is a lot of story has been done on the background of this, but as a user no one knows that. But when we taking an application as a proper way, then you will understand it. Same way, what I'm going to do in the same coming sessions also, I'll take one best example as to define my database architecture. For this database architecture, what is the best way to define it and how could we used it, right? So that this data management is transferred as the database systems, and the database systems or the database is an organized of collection of data. Okay, means what? The databases basically consist of the data in organized format, right? See that, very important thing, very important sentences, right? Next is the collection. It is a collection of schema, tables, queries, reports, views and other objects. Right, now let me talk about what is this objects here. Yes, right. So now let me go to some in-depth concept how this database architecture is. Any format you can see, any application format you can see, or any person who is used in the market right now will be uses. Maybe the database developers are Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server or else DB2. All these are the different databases, right? This is a database products. All these are the database products, right? Java uses by Java applications, Java developers. Microsoft SQL uses Microsoft application developers like .NET applications, right? There are a few guys, DB2 will be used in some kind of mainframe concept. So mainframe is one of an application development to organize the data, and there is one more database called MySQL. This is a database will be used by PHP developers. Yes, please remember all these things, guys. Basically, it is very important to remember all these four different things, because as you, for example, as you are learning databases, right? You are learning some DBMS right now, right? The concept is same. Remember and listen these words, very important things. Okay. So as you are learning right now DBMS, right? The concept under this DBMS, we will learn the language called SQL, and this language will be utilized on all of these products. Mean to say that if you learn one product, either Oracle or SQL Server or DB2 or MySQL, nothing but you are professionals in any one of the database. Imagine it. To understand the second database is pretty simple. It's just a matter of 2 hours time. Yes, once you learn one particular SQL, if you learn one particular SQL, the same language utilizes by Oracle, same language utilizes by Microsoft SQL Server as well as DB2 as well as PHP. I mean to say MySQL. So that what I am trying to talk about right now is, in this databases, we have something called it as a database. It is a major part. Within this, I mean, first let me talk about one server. Let me take one example product as SQL Server product. Let me take an example as Microsoft SQL Server. Within this, I have several databases, right? Let's say database 1, let's say database 2, let us say database 3. I mean to say there are a number of products I am developing in the market of .NET, right. Let us say database 5. Every application uses particular database. My application 1 uses database 1, application 2 utilizes database 2, application 3 database 3, application 4 database 4 and application 5 database 5, right. This is first part. And every database consists of some set of objects, right. Set of objects in the sense, what is this objects are? The objects are something which your table is an object, right, where your data gets stored here properly, and followed by there is an object called it as views. There is an object called a procedure. There is an object called function. There is an object called triggers, right. These are the different objects will be presented in one database. As in the same way, your database 2 is also consists of some information. Mean to say that not only single table here, you can have a multiple tables here. Not only one, there can be more than one, right. Same thing also views. Means what? Under the tab of views, you will find not only single table, multiple tables also. As in the simple procedures, you have a number of procedures. Functions, you have a number of functions. Triggers, you have a number of triggers here. All this comes under the process of single database here. So, what is the database can be defined it as? Let me go to the presentation again. See that it is a collection of your schema, tables, queries, reports, views and the other objects. Other objects in the sense, this all are your other objects here. The other objects in the sense, this one is, right. Don't worry guys, we will discuss all these particular things in detail in the coming sessions, right. How do you write a table? How do you write a view? How do you write the procedure? How do you write the function? How do you write the triggers? It is one important thing is, you need to have a much concentration when you are learning it. Am I very clear? Right. The next part is, the database designers typically organize the data in models, aspects of reality in a way that supports the processing requiring the information, right. See that, for example, in the market you got a job on the databases, nothing but you will work as a database developers or else you will work as a database designers, right. For example, in after this you got a interview on a particular database called SQL server, or else you got the inquiry or you got particular job offer on Oracle. Once you got into this, right, so you will be deployed as the database designers, or else the people, some people will call it as database developers also. What is this developers will uses? Developers of databases typically organize the data in models. The reality of how it will be supports the processing of the information. Means what? We need to choose a particular data model. Nothing but before you choosing a data model, we need to know what is this data model is first of all. Yes or no? As I am storing the data in this particular format, before I doesn't know about the data model, first I need to know what is this data model and what the different data models are available, in which is a suitable one for me. I will select that, then I will go to implement that particular data model. Once you select the data model is finished, then the next comes with the designing of your databases to store the information which is given by the users. Am I very clear? Right. So, that is the reason, please remember these things. The database is organized in collection of data. It is a collection of tables, views and schema as well as relations and the other objects. And the last one is, database designers typically organize the data in the data model format and this will be uses for supporting the informations, right. So these are the few things or few points you need to remember. Please note it down, guys, because these are the points which will be asked in your interviews. Okay, what is the mean of data systems and what is the mean of data management? Am I very clear? Please, you need to remember these 2 points. Okay, right. So now let me go to the next one. What is the next one? We need to know about what is a data model is. For example, I was recruited as, for example, I was cleared my all the round of interviews. For example, some company like Infosys, Accenture or Wipro or the other companies like TCS and all ask me, and for example they offer me as one job opportunity to become as a database designer. So I was deployed as a database designer into the TCS or Infosys or some other company. Once I am deployed into that, they ask me to design the architecture of your program, or they ask me to design the flow of your problem. So before I am designing this, what I need to know? I need to know what is this data models are, and in which data model is perfect to my solution or from my problem. For example, in industry there are a problem, and for that problem developer used to write a solution to it. And database developers, what these guys will do, these guys will organize that information on the database, on the back-end process. Front-end developers are different, back-end developers are different. Back-end developers always works on the data which you send from the front-end. If you see that this is your front-end information, this information will be sent from here and it will reach us to your database. These are the people who basically work with your data, organizes the data. So that before I need to work on my data, I need to know about the data models first. Okay, now let me clear this about the data models, right. What is this data models is all about? The data models, a collection of tools for describing, first thing, are data and data relationships, data schematics and data constraints. We talk about a few important things in the next part. And object-based logical models will be an entity relationship model, object-oriented model, schematic model and functional model. And the last one is record-based logical models. In that we have a relational model, network model as well as the hierarchical model. Please note it down, all these points will be very much important for the next session. Okay, right. See that first, a collection of tools for describing. All these tools, what is the describing? This all will be described about the data as well as it will be described about the schematics of your data. First thing is data and second one is relations of data and schematics of data and constraints of data. Right, you know about the data, nothing but it's a raw information. What is the mean of relationships? Let me talk about the relationships now, so that you will understand it. Constraints also I will understand it. Okay, let me have a simple example about your data models. Yes? Yes. Now let me talk about this will be in detail, right. So I do have two tables here. One is employee table, right. The other table is a department table, two tables, right. In in employee table, I have a columns like employee ID, employee name, followed by employee salary, right, and the last one is department ID. And this particular user has to belongs to which particular department. What is this department table consist of? Department ID, department name and department location. Okay. So what is the problem we have usually faced before this? I'll let you know that also. Okay. So but by the time just try to follow this. When you have a next sessions, at the time of next session I'm going to describe you about the next levels also. Right. So, one is a department name, department location as well as department ID. Okay. So, what I usually do is, these are the columns of your table, right. All these are columns, right. Columns in the sense attributes, attributes of employee table, attributes of department table. So, I need to store some information here. Employee ID is 100, right. Employee name is let us say Rahul, employee salary so and so, and the department he usually belongs to a department as 10. But here there is a few departments will be here, say 10 department, 20 department and 30 department, 3 departments. Department 10 is a development, right. Location is Hyderabad, right. Department 2 is testing, Bangalore. Department 3 is administration, say Mumbai. Okay. So, right. So, now I am talking about the relationships, right. I am talking about relationship of your employee table and the relationship of your department table. If there is a relation, what will happen? If there is no relation, what will happen? Okay. So, if I am making a relation, on which basis I need to make a relation of these two tables? I need to make these two tables can be joined based on this department ID. Nothing but this is my parent table, this is my child table, right. What will happen is, every person in the employees table will be belongs to particular department, and that particular department will be hosted in my parent table, right. Let me say parent table is something, say 10 department. So, 10 department is nothing but this one. To make the relation of these two columns, that is department ID and department ID, this is something, call it as relationship, building the relationship about your both tables, building the relationship about both tables. So, building on this, we usually call it as data relationships. That is what we are trying to organize in the previous example, right. Clear? Now, let me talk about once again on this, right. See that every employee of employee table has to belongs to a department table. If there is no relation, what I need to do is, I need to write these 3 columns also in single table. But if I am writing in single table, what will happen is, the length of attributes, length of columns are increasing. That is what the major problem. Instead of doing that, I want to organize the data into 2 tables, your employee table followed by your department table, 2 tables. Now, what I will do is, after dividing the problem into 2 different tables, I want to maintain the data which has to be in both tables, such a way that whenever I want to make the join of department ID and department ID of these 2 tables, if it is similar or if it is same, then I can join these 2 tables. Joining of these 2 tables based on the column of department ID, we usually call it as relationship. So, that is what the models will be describes about. The first one is the data and the second one describes the relationship. Constraint and schematics we will talk about in the next couple of classes, because constraints, in the sense that will be a story which will be, for example, on a particular column I want to store the information who basically salary more than 1 lakh per month, right. Or for example, I want to store the particular employee information such a way that employee name has to be there compulsory. Nothing but I am putting a few conditions on my particular tables, or I want to put some condition on my application, right. So, whenever you want to put all these conditions on a particular tables or particular columns of a table, we usually go for learning about the constraint, and this is the constraint is the solution for a problem, call it as integrity. There is a problem called it as integrity. This problem which makes you to have a data which is not in proper way, right? So we talk about this integrity in the later days, right? So that way whenever we talking about the integrity of the tables or integrity data, at the time we going to discuss about what is this constraint is. The constraint is a solution for integrity problem. The problem one is, I want to store the employee name, has to have some name to it. If someone is giving a null, someone is not giving a name, then I don't want to store that. For example, I want to store a mobile number which is of only 10 digits. Means what, I don't want to store any mobile number which is of 11 digits or 12 digits if I am an Indian mobile number. If it is United States of mobile number, that would be different, right? And the third one is, I want to store an employee information into my table whose salary is more than 1 lakh. Right. In these cases what will happen is, the cases where we need to define our problems, the problem is basically called it as integrity, and the integrity problem solution is the constraint. You can use the constraint on the specific columns of your tables or else specific tables itself, then you don't have a redundancy, you don't have a data which is of a null data, right? That's the reason we're going to go for the constraint concept. The constraint concept we'll learn in that next part. Yep. Now here the object based logical will be on entity relationship model. This is our next agenda to learn on this. That is something called it as a concept of data relationship model and object oriented model, schematic model and functional model. Alright. So record based will be relation model, hierarchical model as well as the network model, right? All the examples whatever I am telling you right now, which all comes under relational models, nothing but the Oracle database or else DB2 database or else Microsoft SQL Server database, all this comes under the process of relational models. What is the entity and relations? Okay, so we talk about this first. Okay, right. So as we are, our journey will start from first entity relationship models, right? Then after that we will learn about what are the different languages in DBMS, right? Entity and relationship. Okay, anything is an entity first of all. Before I am talking about anything entity, everything is an entity in your application development. Maybe your table is an entity, right? Other table is an entity. First thing is, I want to define our problem here. Let me say what is that problem is, I want to design a database for online shopping, right? Or else I want to design a database for hospital management system, right? I just want to define a system or I want to design an application, a database, or as I am a developer of database, I usually design a database either for online shopping or hospital management system, right? So any of these two cases, we have a something called it as registration page, right? We'll have this, we'll find a registration page on your browser, right? You have a registration page where all the details has to be given over there, and the details will come from here and it will be stored in your database. Okay, so this is your database right now. Clear? Within this database, I'll take an example as Microsoft SQL Server. Microsoft SQL Server database I am going to use here, right? And this particular database server, how it will be get used, okay, right. So when we are defining a problem for registration page, when we are defining a problem of registration page, and what is the necessary things has to be there on your database first. First thing is, as you want to send the information to a database, first you need to have a table there. Within this you need to have a table to store the information. Means to say that whenever your data is sending from your application, that has to be processed and it will be stored as information. Now before this information is stored here, as a database designer you need to have one table over there. Once a table is created, you can store the information. and you can also do some other operations, like you can update the password, you can update the email ID, all these things. Sometimes you want to close your account also, right. For this problem, how an entity relationship model can be built, right. I will just give you a basic structure here first thing, right, just rough diagram, right. So, we will talk about entity relation model in detail in the next session, I guess, right. So, we will talk about entity relationship in easy way as well as very easy manner, okay. But the thing is, I just want to store this information in a tabular format just by the time, right. So, that I will just take some rough diagram of your tabular format, right. Right. So, first thing is your table name is a registration table. Yes, this is the registration table, consists of few columns, right. What is that columns, or let me say the columns of this particular table will be, what is the first column we have? We have a column called, first thing is, what is the column name? Say username column, okay. The next one is password column, right. I will just take one more column, right. So, that column name is email ID column. The next column is probably next column is mobile number, right. The next column is let us probably take it as some one more column here, say address column, right. Right. So, first thing is, we will identify few factors from here first. What are the few factors we need to analyze here? All right. Username is a column name, password column name, email ID column name, mobile number column name, address column name. All these columns are representing one table, call it as registration table. Yes. Now, what is this entities relationships models here? The entity relationship model, here is entity. All right. First thing is, let me directly take this one, table is an entity, right. For this entity, we have a few attributes here. Attribute in the sense, columns is your attributes, right. So, as you are defining a problem in this particular way, this kind of diagrams are called it as ER diagrams, right. You basically find out the term called ER diagrams, right. The ER diagrams is a term defining your problem with this particular, I mean like this, we have actually we have a separate different rules to design the ER diagram, right. So, that will be discussed in the next session, because as I just want to tell you how the diagram looks. This is how the diagram basically looks, right. In this, here registration is your entity and the respectives are attributes. Attributes will be there in and around your entities, okay. When you define your things, that will be called it as ER diagrams, nothing but entity and relationship model diagrams, okay. So, that is what the first factor here, okay. So, just want to talk about this, so that I just want to explain you that problem is, okay. So, what we basically used is, we basically use the terminology of relational model with the help of entities model, okay. In the next class, we are going to discuss about these relationships, along with this relationship and how this relation model will be exist in the databases which we are using currently in the market, right. To know all of this, to working all of this, we required one more thing, call it as types of languages which we basically used in DBMS. Very important thing, very important thing, right. Nothing but DBMS is a system software, and the products what we have discussed is SQL Server, Oracle, DB2. In all this language, in all these products uses SQL. Remember that the meaning is SQL, stands for Structure Query Language. Repeating once again, uses the language called SQL. SQL stands for Structure Query Language. It is a language which uses by the different databases. The databases like Oracle, SQL Server as well as DB2. That is the reason I am telling you in the previous few minutes back. If you are master in one database and you can work with the second database very easily without any difficulties. A few changes, in and around 1-2 changes will be there, but apart from that everything is same. Right. So, that is the reason when you are defining your application, it would be very easy to have this kind of thing. This SQL will be again segregated into a different languages. So, that is the languages we just want to concentrate right now. And the languages what I am going to use in this here is a few languages. Please look after here. First language, call it as DDL. Right. Second language is DML and the third language is DCL. Right. So, how this particular application will utilize this? So, do not worry, in the next class we are going to discuss in detail about the ER diagrams, and we will see a diagram very easily. We will define one problem and we will see the solution to that. Right. So, for the solution whatever it have, we will see that solution. Okay. Now, what is my intention is to show is the languages of SQL stands for right. Languages will be used by all the databases currently in the market right now. What it mean to say this is, if you imagine this is your database, right, and this is your end user, as a programmer you are using it. Between you as well as your database, there should be a mediator who can understand the languages. The mediator we basically write it as SQL, nothing but whenever a user want to communicate with these databases, we need to know the language called SQL, yes or no. So, that if I write some instruction in terminology of SQL, so that whatever I am writing here, this will be understood by your database. So, whatever I was expected from a database, I will get it as a result, right. So, that is the reason when you are writing an instructions as a user, when you are writing an instruction, returns instruction in the format of SQL, and this SQL will be submitted on your database, so that your requirement will be submitted on database now, so that you will get the information to the user. And indirectly or directly, this SQL again categorized into a different languages. First one is DDL, stands for Data Definition Language, DML as well as DRL, right, and TCL, last one is DCL, right. Okay, so let me write it very clearly now once again. So, how this languages will be used? First language is DDL, second language is DML, DRL, next language is TCL, next language is DCL, alright. The first language name pronounced as Data Definition Language, the first language, and second one is Data Manipulation Language, Data Retrieval Language, Transaction Control Language, last one is data control language, right. Please note it down all these things, and every DDL again have a few different queries. First one is data definition language, create. Second one is alter. Third one is drop. Fourth one is truncate, right. Data manipulation again have a three things. One is insert, second one is update, third one is delete. Data retrieval language will have only one, that is select statement. TCL have a two statement transaction control statement. One is rollback and second one is commit. Data control language have a two things. One is grant, second one is revoke. Okay. So, all the different languages which uses by your SQL language, please note it down all this, very important thing. In the next coming all the sessions, we will be used all the different queries in my development of a particular database. Alright, please try to remember all these important languages. Okay. So, DDL stands for data definition language, which is used to define any database or else database objective definitions. So, that we'll discuss. And the second one is data manipulation language. This will be defined to manipulating the data which is presented in your database table. Second thing. Third one is without disturbing the data of your database. Sometime you want to read the data from the database, we usually call it for data retrieval language or else DQL, data querying language, both are same. And there are a few chances if I do mistakes in my transactions, then I will make it as rollback. If a transaction is successfully finished, then I will go for commit. There are the two languages, two queries we have. Query in the sense, for example, you guys would bit perfection in the programming languages, right. Programming languages, one line of code is finished, we basically put a semicolon. That's we call it as a statement, right. We call it as a statement, right. So, the statement is same as the query in the database, as simple as that. Am I very clear? Right. Last one is data control language, which basically uses for grant and revoke, right. So, that will be a language we basically discuss in this part. Okay. So, see that data definition language is used to specifying the database schema. Let's SQL instance categories will be under DDLR. To create the database instance, we'll use create statement. To alter the structure of database, we'll use alter statement. To drop the database instance, we'll use drop statement. To delete the database instance of a table, we usually use truncate, and to rename it, we'll use it as a rename statement. That comes under DDL language. Please write it down all these 5 queries. Majorly we'll use 4, the 5th one is an optional, right. Basically rename as well as alter mostly do the same thing, but mostly as in the development of my applications, I usually go for defining with altered statement, right. Data definition language is used to specifying the database schema. The text instance of SQL will have categorized of 4 parts: create, alter, drop and truncate, and the rename is an optional case. Whereas DML will consist of 4 parts: select, insert, update and delete, right. So, select is basically used to read the data from the database, right. And the next one is DCL, which basically used to grant the information like grant and revoke. For example, I want to give some permissions, I will use grant, and if I want to go for access the data, to stop the access data, I will go for revoke, and this is what the overall structure of your database. Alright. So, that will take some time to define it. So, that I guess the timer for the today's session, right. So, that is what we have done in today's session is, today we have done about what is data systems, and we have discussed about different languages here, and in which we have discussed about data models. In the data models, right now I am choosing as the relational models. Tomorrow we are going to discuss briefly about entity relationships. Today I am just giving you a simple thing which is not in a proper way. I mean, just to understand you where a problem and solution I have just defined it, but thing is it would be in a proper way. So, that will be discussed in next session about in detail very easily about entity and relationship models. Okay, there is a specific lesson we have on that. Then after that we will go for the languages of DDL, I mean SQL, we will have a DCL, TCL, DML and DDL. So, that languages will use as a different queries. Queries will be utilized in the next coming classes, right. So, define with a problem as well as the solution, right. Thank you so much for listening to us. Have a great day. By the way, I am Anil Kumar.